Well, good afternoon for a Sunday afternoon, and I was going to do this little video tomorrow, but I'm at a pretty good spot here because I wanted to show you a little more about how this works. I've been on it all day, pretty much yesterday, and all day today. I hope that light's showing up for you here. I think I'm somewhere over 100 pieces into this thing, which is really, I feel pretty good about it. We got a long way to go. And as I mentioned before, this is the lamp that we're building, and I'm going off a little different direction than what they've gone here. And I've got the direction I'm more or less headed similar to this, closer to this. But I'm kind of moving back and forth between these two, this, and then what I think I want to do with the glass that I have and what they've done here. This is a little... certainly this is the original Tiffany here from 1906, and I certainly would not criticize that lamp at all. But I was going to make my color selection a little bit different. And with these originals, I don't know how many of these they actually made. I did read that at one point I think there were several hundred of these made. And as I've said on several videos before, there are only 14 of these that are known to exist. And I've seen these, some information on these, and they've gone off in auction for well over $1 million. In fact, I think, if I'm not mistaken, one went for $2.2 or $2.3 million. A lot of money. And so these, by the way, were most all built by women. Most all the Tiffany lamps were built from 1895 on into the early 1900s. And they were originally built to make use of the scraps that the Tiffany Glass and Decorating Company had from all these major windows that they did for the rich and famous in the late 1800s and in other places in the world too. They shipped windows to Europe. So anyway, they were very successful with the big windows, and we see a lot of those if you Google Tiffany windows, the real thing. There are still numerous windows around, and the glass was done using up scraps. And there was a designer that worked for Tiffany. Her name was Clara Driscoll, and she and a group of women, affectionately known as the Tiffany Girls, built these lamps. My assumption would be that there would probably be 4, 5, 6 people building one of these lamps, or not necessarily one, but several. And there may be 2 or 3, 4 women cutting glass, and another 2 or 3 or 4 women putting them onto a form and soldering them up. Anyway, we're going to got a one-man operation here, and anybody that's building these, with a few exceptions, are doing them by themselves. And that's the original base that was called a tree trunk base. And then I've talked about this before, but we'll talk about it again. There's the crown, which is cast, and I have the crown and the base are about 2 months out, which I'll still be working on this window, or the lamp itself. And I'll show you what you get into with this. And these pictures here are from a lamp that Gail Obler and Scott Riggs built, and they're two well-known lamp builders, makers, and they're just as good as anybody there is that does this, probably in the top 2 or 3, or I would say the top 4 or 5 in the whole country. And so this was their representation. They went together on this, and both of them worked on it. And I liked the way this lamp looked. And so I thought, well, I would go somewhere between this and this. And I've worked and looked at every little piece as I've gone along here. And I keep track of this way. This is the Mylar pattern. And I cut this out. And the last time I was talking on my Facebook page about this, I did not indicate how these are cut out. I use an X-Acto knife, and I cut just inside that black line. So you can see, move this over here, so you can see that I have this like a web of material that's left over. And I'm cutting inside that black line so each piece, to compensate for the fact that each piece of this glass is wrapped with a thin strip of copper foil. And I did have a piece of, well, I'm not going to mess with it. Anyway, I had a piece of glass here with some foil around it so you could see what I'm talking about. But anyway, say this piece right here, and I've taken the leaf pieces and cut most of them off the Mylar pattern, so when I get ready to get one out, I don't have to do a whole bunch of work. I only have to make one little small cut. So anyway, you can see how I've actually cut inside that black line. So this is all about attention to detail. And then I'll show you what I've done here and how I do this. I'm working in this glass right here mainly. This yellow mixed with this green, and these are from the same sheet. Here's some more. So the color's working real well together. And when I got down into the, where do I want to go with this? Let's go over here. When I got down into these lower sections of these leaves, then I was going to move more toward more yellow with a little bit of green in it. Not necessarily trying to do what they've done here, but a cross between here and the Riggs Obler lamp and what they've done. And I liked what they had done. And so I was looking at the glass that I have, and I've got quite a bit of glass. But yellow is a strange color. As an oil painter, I've done a lot of oil painting. I always had, I wouldn't say trouble, but I had a higher degree of difficulty in working with yellow oil paint than others. And the reason is that there's just not a subtlety to matching up the colors. And here's the yellow that I've been working with. And bear in mind, this is an LED light table, so it's not going to be the same as what the client's going to have for light bulbs in his lamp. Here we have fluorescent tubes over here. And so what I've done here is I've gone with more of a green up in the upper portions and then shifted down as I've come along to get into more yellow from that old sheet of bullseye glass, and that's what this glass is here. I have mixed some other glass in with it just a little bit right up in here. Anyway, I decided, and let's go where we're working here. This spot, boy, you can get lost here real easy. Let's see, this spot right here. And by the way, this is my paper pattern, and I mark this paper pattern, the pieces that have been done and that are up on the patterns. I color them in with color pencil when they're completed, so I can see the lamp being built here, and then of course that would correspond to the pattern here that's been cut. So when I do 5 pieces, for instance this number 11 here, and we're going to talk about number 11 and number 12 and 13. I'll show you something in just a second. So anyway, number 11 is right there. Right there. And of course it's all on all 5 of these. We're over there. All 5 of these sections of the lamp, because as I've said before, this lamp, the design repeats itself 5 times. So number 11. So I thought, well, I wanted to maybe have a little more intense yellow to come down into the lamp itself. And you can see here from the Mylar pattern that the L, that's what that means, leaf, are all the way coming down into here. So I thought, well, I want to bring that into more of a yellow down here. So I found a yellow that I thought was going to work for me. And in fact, I even laid out the pattern, and let me show you how this works. All right. So there's the number 11 pattern. Let me get that where you can see it. There's the number 11 pattern. So I put that number 11 pattern down on this glass where I wanted that to ultimately cut that glass. And I decided that all along the section of that leaf that came off the stem, I would have more green. And then I want the yellow to, the leaf to kind of be fading. And so I put the yellow out on the edge of the leaf. And then I thought, well, I like that. Let's go to number 12. And let's go back over here. There's the 11. There's 12. And there's 13. So then I laid out and I thought, well, I want to do the same thing with number 12. So we come along 12, 12, 12, 12. There's 5 of them, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then 13, I did 2, and then I was going to look for another place on this sheet of glass here to try to get something that replicated these 2. I could come back down here and get that. Well, I looked at that sheet, and I kept looking at it, and I thought, you know, that's really attractive, but there's something about this that just doesn't look right. And what doesn't look right is that there's just so much difference between these 2 that I felt like, this is just the decision that I'm making, but I felt like that this was so strong in respect to what's already there that it would it would just stick out too much. It would, the attention of your eye would be drawn to this super bright yellow. And so I thought, well, and I kept trying to make that work, but I just could not get that to be compatible with what I thought this should look like. So I left these marks on this sheet there. It's no big deal. It's just a felt tip. And I left them on there just to remind myself that, you know, it didn't work. And so I went ahead and cut this 11 with the work I've been doing. And there's an 11 right there. And there's the green shifting to yellow. And that looks a little more compatible with the actual greenery that we have on the top of this lamp. And bear in mind that this is the same plant. In other words, and I've got all kinds of artistic license here. I can do anything I want to do, but I've got a nice piece of yellow there in contrast to here. Now, this glass is not from the same sheet, so it's a little bit different. So anyway, that's the kind of stuff that you're working here, and you're trying to make these decisions all the way. There'll be all kinds of decisions to be made on down through here with one glass in respect to another. And here, considerably more easy to transition from this softer blue on down into some different places where the blue is darker, a little bit softer, and then they get down in the bottom where the blue is nearly turned purple. If I decided that this was what I wanted to do, this is considerably, to me, easier to accomplish than coming over here with this. However, I thought this was a beautiful representation of the lamp itself, and I wanted to go more that direction than, I don't want to say this the wrong way, but I didn't want to take the easy way, which this would have, in my opinion, would have been easier to build a lamp like this. But I'm not in a hurry, and I don't care how long this takes. And what I'm trying to do here is to make the best possible looking lamp that I can possibly make with the skill package that I have. So there we are. And by the way, this Mylar has some kind of little ripples in it here and there. So these are just long pieces of what we call bar stock or steel. And I just set it on here so this thing doesn't move around on me. And I'm actually pretty happy with where I'm at on this thing after this weekend of going at it. Let's go over to this other side and you can see it a little bit better. And then there's some, they have taken, Mr. Riggs, Miss Obler have taken, and let me find you something here. They've gotten up in the top of their lamp with some blue, and here they're up in the top of this lamp here with a little bit of blue. And I'm going to take a little bit of artistic license because, let me plug this in right here. That's the background where these leaves and branches, vine work is coming down. And I'm going to use a little bit of this right here. And look at this, these soft yellows inside of here with a little bit of this vine work working here. So I'm going to cut some small pieces out of here. This is another sheet of this, and this stuff is real old. This is 1997, Ouroboros 97. And I've got these two pieces, and I have a larger sheet, but it's a little more transparent than this, and I'm actually more interested in this opaque, opalescent, where you don't really see through it. So this stuff right here, these two pieces right here, and look at the color on this thing. Now, of course, those will be, if I get into this sheet here, these pieces will be built. Everything here is very small. So that's just huge. There's no single piece of glass in this entire lamp that's half that size. So anyway, there's a little bit of the blue in here. And the way they make this glass is they take this white, cream white colored glass, and they roll a hot sheet of that over these tiny little flakes. These are tiny little flakes of glass. And then these are what we call stringers, and they're just little long strings of a dark black, or in this case, I believe that is black. Could be a little bit of green. There's a little bit of green. Anyway, they lay that out on a table, and then they roll a sheet of this stuff over the top of it, and this glass is 2,400 degrees, so it melts and picks these little pieces up and melts them right to it. And so anyway, that's what it looks like on the back side of it. And then if you flip it over and you work small pieces of that into a lamp, or small pieces of this into a background behind foliage, vines, trees, whatever, you get this really cool effect of looking at nature. If you're standing under a tree and you're looking at tens of thousands of leaves, there's a muted look behind the ones that are in the foreground, and that's what this is all about. So I'm very fortunate to have this glass, and I've got some more stuff that's pretty close to this, but I dig it out. But anyway, I know these two work, and these two right here would probably be enough to get everything done that I want to do on this thing. And you can see here, the Tiffany, they worked with a similar glass down in the lower sections in the background behind this wisteria here. And there it is right there. Confetti. I don't see any strings in this glass. Now, I'm fortunate that I've got a fractured confetti streamer, if you will, to work with. So I've got some little lines in mine. So anyway, this would be a good place here when we get to the bottom of this lamp to add some of that, and maybe the lighter sheet rather than the darker. And then the darker sheet up here, and I plan to put it up in these areas right behind some of the leaves. Certainly I'll want to get some of the color from the actual flowers up under here, but in some of these spots up in here, I'm going to put these fractured streamers, confetti fractured streamers, whatever we want to call it, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, I'll put that up in the background behind there. And I don't see any more here other than just down along, there you go, down along this lower 20% of the lamp right in there. And those pieces would be, that's probably an area right there, 198, somewhere in there. So anyway, that's where I'm at, and I wanted you to see this because I could not make that work. Although I really like the way this looked. Now, I'm not maybe done yet because, interestingly enough, and there's 12, 11's already been done, but there's 12 and 13 already sitting there ready for me to go. And the way I do this stuff, I don't have my camera set up to show you how I cut these. It's not that big a deal. What I was going to do with this was here's my lovely German glass cutter. I was just going to take this glass cutter and score right across here, then come in behind it, score right across there. And I would have this, if you will, this single river of glass. And then I just strip these things out one right after another and cut them. And what happens then is I go over to I cut all, say we were going to do, I've done this here. Say number 11 here. Okay, I cut 5 of them. Then I come over to the grinder, and I set this piece here right there. And I can see that. Then I come over to the grinder. Now, I'm a pretty good cutter, so I don't need much grinding. So you're just cleaning around the edge of each sheet, and I'm looking at it, making sure that kind of a picture in my mind of what it actually looks like. So each piece, let's get one. All right. Here we go. Is that right? That's it? Okay. So I'm on the grinder here, and you can actually hear this thing running. There it goes. So I'm on the grinder, and I'm looking at this piece here, and I'm going to get that pretty much to conform to that inside curve. And then this is pretty straight with just a little bit of a tiny bit of an arch in it. Then the back has one little tiny dip, and you can hardly see it here, but there's a tiny little dip right there. Then what I do, I'll do all 5 of them. Then I pick each one up separately, and I take this, I'm trying to do this with one hand, and I take this pattern piece of paper. This is hard to do with one hand. There we go. I take this piece of pattern paper, and I want that piece of glass to fit exact, or as absolutely as close as I can possibly get it to this piece of glass. Then I come over to the pattern that I have laid out and set it in there. There it sits. Now, you say, well, it doesn't look like it hits that pattern right exactly. It won't necessarily have to hit this pattern quite exactly, because all I did was just trace this out off this original right here. And I wasn't really concerned if it was exact or not. I'm going somewhere here. But number 11, since it's been done, it goes in my little finish bucket there. Anyway, it didn't matter that it isn't exact. It's awful close. It is exact, because what needs to be exact is this. This has to be exact, because if I've got this exact, then it's going to fit the mold. And when the mold comes in, which I assume is over the next couple of weeks, you'll be able to see that this pattern here is imposed on that mold. And so the black lines and everything, I have to put the black lines on there, but the pattern itself has been imposed on that mold. And so let's do one other thing here. We're giving away all the secrets here. All right, tacky wax, right? All right, this is a wax down in there, and there's my brush. All right, and I heat this wax up, and I paint that wax onto the mold. Now that wax is transparent, and we'll be doing that. I'll show you how you do that. Okay, when the mold has had all the black lines put on it, like I said, there's little grooves cut on the mold, so I'll know where all the black lines are. When the black lines are intact all the way around, or finished all the way around, then I paint that mold with a thin layer of that tacky wax. Well, then each one of these pieces, I begin at the top, and I'll take, say, for instance, that piece right there, and I'll take that piece and pick it up and set it on the mold. Several of them. That one, maybe 2 or 3, 4 or 5 more of them. All right. Okay, if they look like they fit exactly the way I want them to fit, then they'll get wrapped. I got it over here, but we don't need it yet. But here is the copper foil, and that's 3/16 of an inch wide copper foil. So each piece of glass will then get wrapped with a thin strip of copper foil, and it'll sit back on the mold. The idea here is that nearly 2,000 of those pieces will be sitting on the mold with each one fit and with the copper foil on it. And then we begin the soldering process, which is another whole rigmarole of its own. So anyway, this is a long process, but if you like what you're doing, and I really enjoy this stuff, then it's fun. So anyway, I just pulled this back out for you to see this. And see, now this green, that's more of an emerald green, and that didn't work at all with that. So I thought, sometimes, you just fire in and do stuff, and I don't do that because I'm, putting too much thought into this, but it just didn't work. There is, however, the possibility that the subtleness of this green mixed with the yellow might work. And I want you to see something that's real interesting, particularly with handmade glass. All right, you can see what this looks like on this side, right? There's this green that it's on here is more predominant on the other side. Look at that. So it's kind of a mix. We've got the green here and then more green on this side. It's 2 different pieces of glass when you turn them over. So there's certainly a possibility that some of this yellowy green here might work in this piece in one other area, but I'm not sure about that. I still have to work that out. Anyway, this didn't work, and I had another piece of it. This is really old glass. What is this? 1997. So this is Uroboros from 97. Uroboros is no longer in business, and very few people have any of this glass, if anybody does. Anyway, look at it. Let me get this where you can see this light. Look at that glass from this side and then that side. So this side, you're green, and that yellow band that you see is just a thin layer of yellow that's on the other side of this piece of glass. There it is. So this is actually two different pieces of glass. If you were intending to use it, say on this lamp, and you put this side facing out, you're going to get all this yellow. If you turn it around and put this side facing out, you're going to get this muted green. So got to pay attention to what you're doing here every step of the way. Ooh, I looked up and saw only one pattern piece here. I thought I cannot lose it. Well, I could just get some more Mylar and copy it here, but I'd like to just keep these. So those are the next two, and I'll cut as soon as I get off this video here. I'll take off and do number 12. And 12 is right there. And we can show you, a bit easier to show you right here. There's 12. So I'm going to do 12, 13, 14. And I got to be careful here because I'm on the same leaf. And here's a little bit of an extension of that leaf from the other side. So here's 12, 13, 14, 15. Then back up here, 16, 17, 18. All on this right off this same leaf. So you can't just be leaping all over the place, you know. And I would take this opportunity to mention that when you see one of these big lamps somewhere and they're $400, what you're paying for there is all their leaves are just green. They just whack out some green glass and it's green. And then the soldering and the cutting won't be precise. So the solder beads are flat, or their glass is sticking up out of the solder. They're just atrocious. However, you know, they're decoration pieces, and a lamp like that is just fine to set in the corner of some room 30 feet away. But if you get up next to a lamp like that, particularly if you know anything about how this stuff is done, they just kind of, they just don't look good. But anyway, that's the difference between, you know, fine handmade stuff and stuff that's whacked out on a computer. So anyway, I know one thing. There's no shortcut to building one of these. This is just, as my art teacher and mentor says, D. Carter Ray, you just knuckle it out. So that's what we're doing here. And I think if you've seen enough of this work already, in particular, this particular piece of work here, you are confident in that you've got to love what you're doing to dive into one of these, because I think I've been on this thing pretty good for about 3 days, and I'm happy with the progress so far, but it's slow. But it's meant to be, because it's every single piece, and every single piece is picked out for that spot, one at a time, and I put a lot of effort into trying to figure out what goes where. The end result is going to be this stunning piece of glasswork that I'll be proud of, and that the beautiful thing is that long after I'm gone, these pieces like this that have had so much effort put into them, and particularly in 2022 when there are few younger people picking up this craft, I'm not sure about why. I mean, I've got all kinds of ideas about that. But the learning curve to get to being able to do something like this is real steep and real long. So maybe that's it. Maybe, and I think we're all of us are used to, you know, something being more instantaneous. And this stuff here, to get into production of a lamp like this, you've got to have dedicated a real serious commitment to the time it takes to do this kind of work. So there are just certain kinds of people that are going to do this kind of stuff, and I'm certainly not saying that they're better or than anybody else. It's just the way you're twisted or bent, and to get into this is all solitary stuff. To get into a room and stand there for 2.5 or 3 months or longer and do this all day, every day, you've really got to love to do it. And so I think that's where I am. anyway, I'm appreciative of all the interest in this lamp, and I'm happy that I thought about trying to do TikTok. You know, I don't know how long that is, 12, 15 seconds, about the progress of this lamp. And I thought, oh man, I don't have time for all of that. I'm just happy to be doing it. And I am pleased that I'm able to take you along the way and to show you how one of these is built. And in fact, how they were built over 100 years ago, with the exception of they did not have that grinder. And oh, by the way, that's the 5/8" head that I have. And I'm right over here. If some of these pieces have, I'll find one real quick here, and then I'll get you off here, right here. So we've got this piece right here, and that 5/8" grinder head is going to be too wide for this. So that's where we would clean this interior cut right here with that smaller grinder. And I come here and got a little bit of a sponge here, and I kind of push that wet sponge up behind that little grinder head there and get into these tighter spots. So I've got that grinder, which is used not nearly as much as this one. But they didn't have these grinders. So, man, my hat's off to the ladies, the Tiffany girls, because, wow, doing that thing right there without electric grinder, that's tough. In fact, that piece that we were just looking at is right there. Right there where that curve. So they were really good, really good. And okay, anyway, I'm going back to work. I appreciate the attention to this stuff. Be sure and ask questions if you have them. And like I say, I think this is a good opportunity for me to show you how this is done. And I've said this before, but I just labored in obscurity for decades, and nobody ever paid any attention to this or saw much of it. And I don't even know how much work I've done over this 46 years, 47 years, 46 years. A lot of it, because this is something I've just never stopped doing. And so I'm just trying to learn, trying to get better. I do feel real good about the effort that I've put into these pieces here. And I don't care which piece you pick up there. It makes no difference to me. I think there are about 125, 130 of them right now. They will fit on the pattern. There's my little pattern bowl. They will fit on that pattern so close. They're so close to right. So which means that we're going to have a really, really, really nicely fabricated lamp. It's going to be a real, as far as the quality of the work goes into it, it's going to be right up there as very good. And I still have yet to get the color selections all done, but that's as far as I'm concerned, that's the hard part. So we're doing the hard part, and you can see the effort that goes into that right here. Boy, you know, if that yellow had been a little bit closer to this yellow here, that would have been really outstanding right there. But I just could not make that work. It just doesn't look right. Well, anyway, thanks again, and I'll be back in, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 days, and we'll probably be out of the green on down into the transitional colors, some up into the background that I talked about earlier over there. So it should look different the next time I show up. Thank you. Bye now.